Hey, what's up, everybody? One coach's opinion. And remember, it's my opinion, not a fact. It's just my opinion. So let's talk about last night's fights between really Danny Garcia and Jose Benevidez. We start off by saying, I've met the Benevidez family. Not Jose though. I've never really met Jose, I don't think, unless he was just out of. But I met David and I met his father. They're real cool. During the times when the COVID was and everybody was in the bubble, we were the same card a couple times. So I met these guys. They're pretty cool. And he seems to be pretty smart. I've talked about his story because at first I was like, man, he was young as I don't know what. But, and compared to his boys, so, he talked about his story, how, he raised his kids and all that stuff. Some of the same stuff they were saying. Anyway, so I say that to say he's a nice guy, nice family. Anything I say, I don't mean no disrespect. I just kind of didn't understand what went on. But Jose Benevidez is like the oldest son. We talked about. It's so crazy how we've talked about the similarities of a father, two sons boxing, the oldest son, the youngest son, the mentalities of both. It's crazy how, our conversation was so similar. But let's get back to what I was saying last night. I just want to say shout out to the Benevidez family, before I start. And I met Danny too, and his father. I actually met Danny when he was like 14, 15 years old, and he was he used to come up. He was on a couple shows I had on. He actually fought I forgot the kid's name. He had his brother named Elijah. He actually fought a little guy that used to fight Gary Russell and them. But anyway, so look, let me say this. So I'm watching the fight last night, and first thing, Tony Harrison made a good point when they interviewed him. He was like, it's weird that you're letting two 147-pounders kind of move up. I think Jose might have had a fight at 154 before, but basically they're both 147-pounders moving up. He was like, it's amazing how do you move up when both y'all are coming from 147 for real? You kind of got to move up and fight a 154 fighter to say you kind of moved up. If two guys decide that they don't want to make 147 anymore and they both go to 154, so you're really testing yourself at 154. And that was his thing. He wanted to fight Danny. He loves Danny. Said we cool, but business is business. This looks like a good fight for me. And he was there. So it might be the next thing coming. Don't be surprised. So I'm watching the fight, and I got to give my hats off to Danny. It was a very confusing fight. If you turn the sound off or whatever, it was very confusing because, starting out, I think Jose kind of tried to bully Danny and say kind of like, man, you're too small. He's just trying to walk him down. But he's landing punches, but it's no punches. It's like no flair on his punch. And at first, I'm like, well, he's landing a good jab. He's boxing pretty good. And then I'm looking at Steve Farhood's score, and I'm like, is it really a shutout? This guy didn't win not one. Are you not counting his jabs? He is jabbing. So, to me, the first part of the fight, although Jose didn't really establish his dominance, his actions, he fought like he did. Let's say that. He fought like he established his dominance in this fight. So, I'm watching the fight as it goes, and Steve Farhood puts up like, he's a shutout. He hasn't won a round, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think he might have won. I even put on Twitter, I think he might have won a couple rounds, and I think he probably did because shout out to Danny for making the adjustments of, okay, you're not gonna be one of these guys that I bully, so now I'm gonna start hitting you 6, 7, 8 times in a row, and I'm a roll. So here's where karma comes in, because if you looked at the Danny versus Lamont Peterson, first thing Danny said, man, you ran, but then you did the Lamont Peterson against this guy and won. So it really is just, when it comes to boxing, it's if it's your day and you got the powers be going your way, you might get it. You might not get it. But back to what I'm saying. Hats off to Danny for making the adjustment and saying, okay, if I can't hurt you, I'll outpoint you. But then I'm listening to Benevidez corner and nobody's making any adjustment. They're just keeping going the same thing. He just like pop, pop, you know, knocking punches away and kind of like, yeah, you a little boy, you know, giving the, you know, he giving them the strong, the bully. It just looked like a dude that was trying to take a dude's lunch money, you know, without the fight going on. You know what I'm saying? He looked like he was bullying Danny, but Danny's touching you. You know what I'm saying? I'm starting to see, okay, now Danny's like, okay, I'll be happy to dance around. I can box. And maybe this is going to be a new phase of Danny Garcia's career, which, I mean, I'm being my honest opinion. I don't think he'll do much at 154. I mean, because truth of the matter is, Jose Benevidez isn't really a true 154 pounder. And if you really can't put any hurt on him, because I don't think he'll do good at 154 either. You know, 147 is where he'll probably cap out. 147 is definitely where Danny probably would have capped out. And I don't think 154 is going to be his magic number. He might make a little money up there. He might, you know, get a few big fights up there. I'll give him that if that's what you're doing. But I don't think, I mean, he can't challenge a Charlo. Who at 150? He says Laura, but I mean, I think he picked Laura because of the less knockouts. But I mean, I think that would be terrible for a terrible fight for Danny Garcia, unless Laura comes in there and completely changes his style, which he has not done. Even though, you know, and I respect Laura, he does what he has to do, and his career is not a bad career at all. You know, he's had some tough decisions, but he's still fighting the same way he's fighting. Elusive. I'm gonna hit you, you're not gonna hit me, and it's gonna be. And he's bigger. He's bigger now. Him coming down in weight or something like that, I mean, he still would rehydrate and be bigger. But I'm just saying, I don't think that's gonna be. I don't think any good name at 154 is going to be a good look for Danny Garcia. But I do give you credit for what you did last night, the boxing, the pop-up, but that's not you. And I don't think you can win a fight against a true 154 pounder that's coming at you doing that. But I could be wrong. He could turn into one of the, yeah, I remember Danny used to sit on everything, was flat-footed. Now look, you didn't think he could, I mean, I've seen Danny as a kid box, you know, his majority, he likes to knock things out, yeah, but he can box, you know what I'm saying? Danny came through the amateurs, he made it through the amateurs, he was an amateur, I mean, standout at a young age, and he can box. He didn't just go in there. Danny Garcia just wasn't clipping it. It wasn't like, oh, let's go see Danny Garcia, you know, he's gonna knock somebody out. That wasn't the Danny Garcia of the amateurs. Some of these amateurs boxed, and then, you know, once the head gear came off, they realized, hey, I can hit too. I mean, Danny it wasn't like he never was stopping anybody, but he showed more of his boxing abilities in the amateurs. Let me say that. I mean, the headgear's on, so you had to show a little bit of your boxing abilities, and he showed it last night. He made an adjustment and decided, I'm gonna win this fight this way, because I'm looking at the fight the whole time, and I'm saying it doesn't look like Jose is doing that bad, but you know, I even saw a fight one time where Floyd told Tank, you know, on the unofficial scoring, you're down, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you have nobody in your corner to say, hey, I don't know if Steve Farhood is right or wrong, man, but he has you losing every single round. I mean, and Steve Farhood has yet to be considered a quack just yet. You know, it's been some fights I might not agreed on him, but he's still getting kind of close to the mark. Even if you don't agree with him, it seems like he's close to the decision. Unless it's one of these highway robberies and nobody's close to the decision. But usually Steve Farhood usually is somewhere around on point. I'll give him credit, usually, you know. So for him to be down, I started looking at the fight. Then I'm looking at, you know, Jose's still doing the same thing he was doing before. You're not laying the punches. Now Danny started laying punches, and it looked like Jose was kind of like, oh, that don't hurt. You're not hurting me. So I'm not going to bother trying to outpunch you. You're not hurting me. But Danny's and he's running up and down. So something's going in. If Danny threw 6 punches, at least 2 of them landed. At least 2, if not more. Because after a while, Jose was just kind of like, fuck these little bitty punches. I don't give a fuck about those. Oh, excuse my language. I don't get, but that's the attitude he was showing. Like, I don't care about these little pity pat punches, you know. And Danny was just like, I'm gonna keep running him off. Got on his little, you know, he bouncing around, he feeling good. He made the adjustment to win a successful fight. Let me say that. And that's one thing I noticed about the fight. The only thing I really could, because it was kind of like, I don't think Jose's losing like that, but they say he's losing like that. And then towards the end, I'm like, well, Danny's losing like that, and I'm thinking Jose's gonna step it up. It reminded me of when Serrano, I think it was Katie Taylor, they fought, and it was like Serrano knew that she couldn't be hurt, so I'm just gonna stalk her and walk her down and punk her. Meanwhile, she was running into punches, and I'm like, somebody needs to say, Joe, you're starting to lose this fight. You dominate. You showed her that basically you're the stronger fighter. You showed her that you could take her punts. You showed her that she couldn't take your punt. She stepped up and started letting her hands go, and Serrano just kind of walked into him like, that don't hurt, that don't hurt, that don't hurt. Which, as a fighter, I can respect, because now you like walking her down like, girl, I thought you could punch. Oh, you can't punch. That's how Jose was kind of doing Danny. But now you starting to run into punches, even though they don't hurt. You still kind of, you know, he's still running stuff off. He's still winning the fight. But nobody said, hey, look, man, you gotta let your hands go. Forget about that. You know, he hunching his shoulders like, yeah, young, like, you know what I'm saying? It just looked like a bully. And then and a guy that's not willing to give up his money. So he does whatever he has to do to keep his money. And okay, if I can't knock you out, I'm just gonna keep touching you up till you get tired of trying to take my money. And that's what that fight looked like. That's what that Serrano fight looked like. I mean, she still, if you watch that fight, looked like the dominant fighter. But you're just losing a fight with your dominance, I guess. And that's how I felt with Jose. It's kind of like you feel you're that dominant over this guy. He might not be hurting you, but somebody has to let you know that you're losing this fight, that you're getting touched. And, you know, no disrespect to nobody in his corner, but either he didn't listen, but I never really seen somebody like, hey man, what are you doing? Are you not, do you not feel these punches he's running off? It was no urgency to me in the fight, like I said, but they translate a little bit, so I don't know really technically if I'm dead wrong, and they were saying some stuff in Spanish, but according to the translator, it was no like, hey man, step it up, blah blah blah, you gotta win this, you gotta win this. And if it did happen, it wasn't like consistently, it was like round after round of the same thing, and you're like, is he winning? You know what I'm saying? His actions actually had me saying to myself, is he clearly winning this fight? And I'm at the end of this fight, is Farhood gonna look like a jerk because he called a shutout and the other guy won? Now on one card it was a draw, and I wouldn't even give it a draw because I felt Danny made a good adjustment, and he won some later rounds. I could go with a 7-5 or something like that. I personally didn't think Jose lost all those rounds. I thought in the early rounds he was doing enough to win the rounds, and that was kind of the problem. I'm just gonna do enough to win these rounds. You know what I'm saying? He a little boy. He kind of carried him like a little boy. But they both coming up from the same weight class, so I couldn't understand why you would carry this guy like a little boy, and y'all are kind of both coming up from the same weight classes. So I didn't really understand that. But I guess in the long run, you know what I'm saying, Danny's paid off. You know, his trip up to 154 is good. I heard about his you know, depression and stuff like that, and you know, and you know, hopefully he gets it together. Hopefully this is what he needed. Hopefully, you know, he's back on track. You know, because you know, it could happen to people, and people just don't realize it. And you know, people look like they're happy in life, and they're not as happy as you think. But you could see there was something wrong with him. So man, hats off to Danny Garcia for making the adjustments in the fights and winning the shit decision last night. And you know, Jose, you still got the skills. They're there. Everybody can see that. It's kind of like, you know, I don't know if you're not listening or you're just doing things your way, but I mean that fight style just kind of lost you a fight. Didn't let your hands go. when adjustments were made, you didn't make adjustments. So one coach's opinion, that's how I felt about it. Tell me what you felt about it, because I was kind of confused. I was on Twitter, I was a little confused. I was trying to get some answers, but one coach's opinion, what you think about the fight last night?